In this episode, we welcome John Casberg, whose journey spans from a thriving career in the restaurant and healthcare industries to an adventurous, purpose-driven retirement. John reflects on the lessons learned through mentorship, leadership, and entrepreneurship, but now faces the ultimate question, what now? After years of professional success, he and his wife embraced the freedom of RV life, exploring national parks as seasonal employees and redefining happiness. John shares insights on downsizing, work-life balance, and finding fulfillment on a traditional career. Join us as we dive into the story of reinvention, adventure, and the pursuit of joy in retirement. Let's listen in. Hello, and I'd like to welcome our special guest today, John Casberg. John is somebody that I've known for a long, long time, and he's made a significant impression on my life, just the way that he leads his life. And I am sure that we're going to get a incredibly thoughtful story today. John, welcome to Secret to a Happy Life podcast.
Thanks for having me.
You're very welcome. It's our pleasure. So we've talked a little bit previously about how we were going to do this, and you have always had an incredibly optimistic, thoughtful view of life, even on the peaks and the valleys. So talk to me about how you, the things in your life that, and then we'll get to where you are now, which is pretty incredible. But talk to me about how it all started for you and the people that were influential in the way that you think and process life.
Yeah.
It's a hard question, isn't it?
Well, I think of a funny line. I can't, to me, every day is kind of a Seinfeld episode. And all I can think of, I was born a poor black boy. I don't know if you've seen that movie, but yeah, I mean, just a kid, you growing up in the north side of Indianapolis, didn't know how lucky I had it, of course, until I moved away. And yeah, my parents sent us to school. It's the little things that you just look back on, getting us to read. You go to school, you learn to read, take it kind of for granted. My mom enlisted us into a library program where you read how many books over the summer, and they checked off a thing. So we'd go learn to swim. After swimming, we'd have lunch, and then we'd go to the library, get a couple books, bring them home, and fall asleep reading these books, taking a nap. And I didn't realize how important all of that was. I love to read, and I think it's because of that. And I used to drive my mom crazy asking questions like, why is the sky blue? Well, I was apparently, based on what she told me before she passed, was just a real inquisitive kid. And so I would say probably two things that I really am grateful for is this curiosity that just comes natural to me, and my love to read, and research this stuff.
So did you have siblings growing up?
Yeah, it was a big Catholic family. There's six of us total. My dad, listen to this, saved enough money through his career. He worked at UILA to send all of us to college if we wanted to.
That's a goal of that's a goal of a lot of parents to be able to.
Isn't that incredible? 6 kids.
Yeah.
So
and so where did you fall in line in 6 kids?
Right in the middle.
Right in the middle.
Perfect spot.
I'm a middle child as well.
It's the best, isn't it?
Yeah, well.
I had an older brother that got in trouble all the time at Catholic schools. Nuns were always gone, the priests were always gone, and he was always in trouble. And it took the spotlight off the rest of us.
Well, I was the first boy in our family, so I got special attention. I have 2 older sisters, and I had, for a moment, I had special attention right up until my brother was born, and suddenly, he's the baby, and he's the special one. So I liked it. People talk about eldest, youngest. I liked being in the middle because I was able to do my own thing, and it wasn't like I was, if you're the first, you're really focused on. If you're last, you're really focused on. We had plenty of love in my family and to go around, so I didn't feel like I was neglected with that. but I was able to do my thing, and it was easy for me. So it sounds like your description was pretty idealistic.
It was amazing. We
Okay,
never
so
locked our door. We lived in this neighborhood where every family had 5 or 6 kids. Could always get a basketball game together, baseball or what. It was in the city. We rode our bikes everywhere. Never locked the freaking door. You didn't live in fear. You didn't. It was looking back. Man, was I lucky.
Well, I was able to do things that I would never allow our children to do. Because it was a different world then. When I was 10 years old, I sold programs at University of Tennessee football games, and you would sell 50 programs and you'd get $5 and a standing room only ticket into the game. Right.
Wow.
So that was enough to buy a hot dog and a Coke. And if you really wanted to be aggressive at the Alabama game or something, I could sell 200 programs and make a little bit more money than just popcorn money for the games. But our parents would take us, most of the games then, there were no night games. They were either at 12 o'clock or they were at 3:30. And they would drop us off in the morning and just leave us. We would, and then after the game, we'd hook up with them, and either our parents that were going to the game, we'd ride back with them, or somebody else's parents would cart us back. But either way, they just left us on our own. And it was a great experience. We never got in any trouble, really. We were, I was motivated to hustle from a pretty early age. And so it was we're of the same, how old are you, John?
I'll be 70 this year.
Okay. So you're a little bit older than me. But it's the same generation where you had some of those freedoms that today's generation really doesn't experience, because I guess, parents like me, you have fear of what's going on in the world. In our house, you'd leave in the morning on a bike. You just had to be home by dinner.
Yeah, exactly.
And then after dinner, you could go out again. You just had to be back in when the streetlights went on.
Absolutely.
So, okay, so we've got that. You're in Indianapolis. You're living the kind of the idyllic childhood, and I know you played sports, right?
Yeah, I wasn't really great at them. My brothers were obsessed with them, but I was good enough to be. I wasn't the last guy picked.
Right. So, did that create a competitive kind of idea?
Yeah, we were
in your
hyper
mind?
competitive.
Yeah.
Family, and it wasn't always healthy. There were some tempers thrown and things like that, and typical sibling stuff. But card games, things like that. I just wasn't. I didn't. For whatever reason, I just preferred to ride around on my bike, go to the swimming pool, and hang out, and things like that. Right. As opposed to organized teams.
All right. So you go, and where'd you go to? You went to college?
So I went to the same high school. My dad, my uncles, and my a brother or two went to. So there's this traditional thing. I got accepted to IU. I was a strong C average student in high school because it was good enough, My attitude wasn't, looking back.
Well, in Tennessee, if you breathing and you graduate from high school, at that time you got into the University of Tennessee.
Yeah, that's how IU.
It's not the same way it is now. I mean,
No,
it's a pretty competitive environment to get in there. But back, again, it was a different time. So did you go to?
I went from an all boys Catholic high school, if you can kind of picture that, to co-ed dorms at IU in Bloomington, Indiana. And
fantastic.
After my first semester, I had a really strong 1.2 GPA.
Oh, wow. You're on probation right after that first semester.
Right out the gate. So at any rate, I never did graduate. I just wasn't, I went to a college prep high school, and it was like more of the same and kind of in my mindset. And I wanted real world experience. And so I dropped out and I got it. And, it's kind of careful what you wish for. It's that real wake-up call when you see how hard your dad had to work to get you where you were. And
when
the
you're
kind of jobs
responsible
you got
for
high
paying
school
the
education.
When you've got to pay your own light bill and the rent.
That's a tough lesson.
Yeah. Well, I mean, everybody everybody has to go through it. That
Oh,
kind
yeah.
of responsibility hits you in the forehead. So you got out of that, and what'd you do then?
Long story short, I got in the restaurant business, and people always ask, well, how did you decide on that? Well, there was food, booze, and waitresses. It was kind of an easy decision. I kind of funny. There were a lot of hours. Restaurant business is a pretty demanding business. In a way, that was perfect for me. It kept me out of trouble, so to speak. You're
Right.
working 60-hour weeks and you come home, you're pretty pooped. And so it kind of kept me from, I had friends that went off and did other things.
Right.
And this kind of kept me on the straight and narrow.
It's harder to be destructive when all you're doing is working.
Yeah. And taught a lot of good lessons. It taught, you found out about what hard work meant. There was a lot of gratification in that restaurant. So whether you're a cook, and I did them all, I did all those positions, dishwasher, cook, eventually got out on the floor as a busboy, and then became a waiter, and then became a bartender, and all those personal interactions and all that, you become the person you become, right? And it served me very well in this role, this part-time role I have now as a tour
Well,
guide.
I keep saying that there's not an original person in the world. We're an amalgamation of everybody that we've come in contact with, everything that we've read, everything that we've heard, and the stuff that resonates with you, you pick it up, and that's the person you become. Your big influencers when you're young, for most of us, are your parents and your close relatives, and then you get out working and you have different influencers there. So who were some of the people that were your primary influencers?
Well, looking back, and it's funny, hindsight's 2020, but looking back, my dad set a really good example of the way he interacted with my mom, helped around the house, all those things. Then I think I say this with, there's two sides of that coin, but being going to that Catholic school and that regiment, right? Just the discipline was probably helpful. At the time, you hate it as a kid, but long term, you think, that made a lot of sense. Some of that regimentation and
So
discipline.
it gave you structure, and
Hey, there's a better word, structure.
their expectations were you were going to be squared away.
Yeah. And so hindsight, I respect that more than I did at the time. I had an older brother, two older brothers, Robert and Jim. They both influenced me. There's things as funny as a sibling, the things that, and my oldest brother, he and I somehow like the same music. Who knew, right? Then my next oldest brother, Robert, he's got a PhD from Yale, really smart guy, very disciplined guy. He and I love the same kind of books. We were very curious guys. We loved to read about stuff. And so he and I shared that love of learning. I got a little sister that was just a best friend kind of. So, your brothers and sisters, I guess, long story short, or would be next in line.
Okay, so once again, it's a pretty idealistic upbringing. It's if you picture the all-American family right now, that's what you experienced growing up. So you've gotten in the restaurant business. You've worked in that, I guess, for a few years. You were
Long time,
there?
all through my 20s.
Okay, and so and did you were succeeding in that?
I was paying the rent for sure, and it was a tough to go from high school to that. It didn't allow for a lot of hobbies, and because I had a lot of interest, there was kind of a dissatisfaction in not having time to indulge in some hobbies or what have you because of the hours I was working. Double-edged sword. My dad at Eli Lilly was transferred to London. They had purchased Elizabeth Arden Cosmetic Company in the 70s, and they had inventory issues, and he was a specialist in that. So they asked him to go to London and fix things. And so he invited me. I was 21 and, wasn't really making headway necessarily. It wasn't, I was, like I said, paying the bills. Broke up with a girlfriend. I was a little in the doldrums. But long story short, I got to go to London, lived there for a year with my parents, and worked in a pub. Got paid under the table, and got to experience that. Made some British friends. Got to learn about the world from a British perspective. Their place in the world. And Margaret Thatcher got elected then, if you remember those years.
I do.
It was a big deal. It was a fun time to be in England. And then my little sister married a guy I knew in high school. He was a year behind me. And he joined the army, and they were transferred to southern Germany, Bavaria. And they said, hey, there are a lot of jobs here on base. You should come down here. And I did. So I got to live right outside of Munich.
From England to Germany.
Yeah. I lived in a little place called Bad Tolz on Special Forces, U.S. Special Forces Army Ranger base. It was just after Vietnam. And so a lot of the guys there, the GIs, had served in Vietnam. So that was an interesting to learn about their perspectives, right, and their lives and the things that they learned from that experience. So that was fascinating. I was there buffing floors when the U.S. embassy in Iran was taken over. Wow. And all of a sudden, I'm buffing floors late at night, getting ready for General Patton's son was coming to visit the base. So I had to get everything up tip-top shape. One of my jobs there was a janitor type thing. And so I heard all these boots in the hallway. It scared the heck out of me. And I came around the corner because I was a little annoyed because I just buffed that floor. And all these guys that I would party with or serve booze at the bar, all of them are sitting on the steps ready to be flown out to wherever needed to be to get our guys out of the embassy. It was really scary. They had their M16s and all that stuff. I was like, I didn't know. I thought the Russians were coming, right?
Right. It got real serious. It got real serious in a hurry, I'm sure.
Yeah. I was there for 3 years.
So were you able to travel around Europe when you were in Germany?
Yeah. So I am in my early 20s. Yeah. So I was working there. I had a free place to stay. I was able to tuck away a little bit of money. And every once in a while, there'd be opportunities to go to Paris. There was opportunities to go to Amsterdam. Right. Buddy and I flew to Israel and toured Israel. So we got to take a look around.
So this is a continuing education for you because now you're in Europe, which is if you've got a quizzical mind like you suggested, then you're getting to experience a lot of different cultures, a lot of different.
Got to learn German. Worked with a lot of Germans.
Did you learn how to speak German?
It's kind of a dialect of Southern German. It's kind of like if a German came to the United States to learn English and went to Alabama. Yeah.
Well, so Germany, from my experience, is super squared away country, and traveling around there, it was a different experience. I always say that small town America is in Germany. There's a lot of, the little small towns where they've got the butcher, the baker, the candlestick maker, and everything's in a town center, and the community on Sunday, everything closes and everybody gets together, and it's really a nice place. So one of the things I've always noticed about you always have a real optimistic view of, regardless of what's going on, you try to look at what the best thing with it. Now, did you grow up with this? Did you always have this attitude, or is this something that you developed along the way?
That's a great question. Can I answer that best? Maybe I'm a little bipolar. Maybe there are times where I can be have been incredibly negative, and then there's times where I feel really, really optimistic. And I think, looking back anyway, that when I'm with people working together on a project, traveling, whatever it is, I'm kind of in my element and I feel great. And I love being around, learning about them. They're like you said, learning their stories, experiencing things together. But when I'm not in isolation, if I tried to be, a guru or something, I'm just not a happy guy, living isolated, if that makes any sense. So, I guess that's just a life lesson you learn as you.
Yeah. So there's, Harvard University has been doing a research on happiness for 40 or 50 years, maybe longer now, collecting data. But the one thing that they have determined that for most people, whether you're an introvert or an extrovert, the thing that is a key to happiness, that the component is relationship.
Yeah.
Right. So if you're alone and you don't have interaction with other people, it's impossible to have that feeling of relationship. And so those people experience it's a pretty big hardship of lack of happiness, if you will. So even if you're an introvert, you might have fewer people, but you have those relationships, and that's key to your pursuit of happiness. So you recognize that. I think it's funny when you say you've had periods where you're incredibly negative, because I've never seen that ever, not once. And and you discovered that, so you figured out that, hey, that relationship component was key, and so you wanted to build on that, and so that because that increased your happiness, and you recognize that when you don't have that, you become, depressed might not be the right word, but you have more negative feelings, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, so we're in Germany. We've traveled around. You're at a central point in the world as far as history at that time too, because that was when Carter was president, and they took the hostages in Iran after the fall of the embassy there. So where do we go from there?
So I got to. That's funny you bring that up, because that was a really interesting period. Carter's president, and the perception of America and him in particular, the vibe, if you will. Reagan got elected, and at least with the military people that I worked and lived with, there was all of a sudden you were respected again. And I'm not blaming Carter. I'm not saying that, but there was you could feel the sense of, okay, we're putting Vietnam and all of that behind us. We're moving forward. It's a new day in America, or whatever you want to call it.
There was a real sense of optimism.
Yeah, it was just a whole different thing. And who knows, I'm not a scholar, but I sensed all of that. I was a part of that. And at any rate, I kind of woke up. I broken up with a girl. Things didn't work out. And I looked around and I realized I'm 25 years old. I've learned to ski. I can speak some, okay, German. I've seen a bit of Europe. I had gone to a private all-boys high school in Indianapolis, pretty respected place. These guys are graduating from med school, law school. And I kind of looked at the mirror and I said,
what are you doing?
It's probably time to get home and grow up.
Right.
So I headed home, kind of reconnected with an old flame, if you will, got some closure on that. And, started working more seriously, if you will. I got back in the restaurant business with some friends and colleagues from before I had left for Europe.
Right.
And took off from there.
So back to Indianapolis.
Yeah, back home.
Now you're in your mid-20s, and there's studies to say that males' brains aren't completely formed until their late 20s.
Wow.
And so women, it happens a little bit earlier, but for us guys, sometimes it takes a little longer to mature. And I always say that you find when you're in your early 30s, that's who you are. Yeah. And so if you're in your early 30s and you're a big partier, then you might be a big partier when you're 60. Whereas if you're in your early 30s and you start saying, well, hey man, this is time I need to be squared away, chances are when you're 60, you're still fairly squared away mentally. Okay, so you're in that process now. Your brain's still growing, by the way, John. You come back, you're 25, you're starting to take life a little bit more seriously. You're back in the restaurant business, and then what happens now? You haven't been married at this point, correct?
No. I had a couple relationships. It didn't quite work out for, it takes two to tango, so to speak. So no blame there. So at any rate, I'm in the restaurant business, and my plan was, because I'd proven to the world that I was not college material. I didn't have the discipline or whatever the word is. So I decided, all right, I'm going to work really hard. I'm going to do a great job, and somebody's going to notice and going to want me to be a part of their team.
So you made the decision when you came back that you were going to, regardless of what you were doing, you were going to pursue excellence at it.
Yeah, exactly.
Whereas before you were just going by and still working hard, but just going by, you didn't have really any kind of plans for the future. Okay. So,
no real purpose.
now we're getting into some good part. You're back and you're starting to pursue excellence in your life.
Exactly.
So what happens once you make that decision? Did things start to happen for you, or was it?
Yeah, things started to happen. I had met a guy in Germany, a son of a special forces. His dad was like a E7, E8, pretty high rank for an enlisted guy. He had kind of a big influence on me in that he kind of changed my perspective about things, and in a nutshell, taking more responsibility. That it's your responsibility to be healthy. It's your responsibility. You don't rely on others. Maybe they can inspire you, but at the end of the day, it's on you. And I came back from Europe, got a job at a restaurant with some guys I used to work with, funny enough, at TGI Fridays. TGI Fridays was a really big deal back in the 70s and 80s. There weren't very many of them. They were really good. They did everything from scratch. Their training was impeccable. Their waiters and bartenders, other restaurants wanted those guys because of that great training. So I teamed up with a bunch of those guys at a locally owned pub kind of restaurant, and I got this excellent training on waiting tables and or bartending. And I'm this really high quality, customer focused training. And these bartenders were the best in the city. And it was the beginning of the restaurant, going out to eat in Indianapolis. When I was a kid, it was a very blue-collar town. Nobody would do that. Why would you waste money when you could just do it at home? By the 80s, late 70s and 80s, we were starting to develop a culinary culture in Indiana, and I was right on the edge of that, which was pretty exciting. So I became a really good bartender based on these people I was reconnected with from my days, my early 20s. So
yeah, I mean, so TGI Fridays was back then was a great franchise, and so what you're saying is they had a system in their training, and it just caught on at the right time for you because you were pursuing excellence, and
perfectly.
Okay, so you attached to it. So what happens then?
So my whole point, again, back to, well, look, if I really show great work ethic, there's going to be people that I interact with that are going to say, wow, that's the kind of guy I want on my team. And sure enough, it happened. A high school teacher, a former high school teacher, was kind of a pseudo-regular at our bar. It was kind of a sports bar / pub thing, and it was a place to be. It was a very, very popular place on the north side of Indianapolis. And sure enough, he came to me one time and just said, hey, look, I'm in this business. He kind of lamented he needed help. And I said, hey, I'd be happy. I don't want to do the restaurant business. I met Linda. We got married. And restaurant business is a tough business to stay married.
And how old are you? How old are you now?
Pushing 30.
Okay. All right. So he says, I've got something I'm working on, I want to do, and I want you to be a part of it with me.
Yeah, he's actually got the job. He's the sales guy, but it's growing. The business is growing, and he needs an aide or an assistant or whatever you want to call that person. And I told him I was interested. I interviewed, got the position.
And what kind of business was that?
So it's medical. I got out of the restaurant business, got into the medical. We were doing specialty beds. Mesquite was the bed. They competed with KCI, who was kind of famous in that business as well, to treat bed sores. So I was he would get the deals, get the business, and then I would go and be his support guy, make sure the beds were operating correctly and nurses were happy and knew how to use them and all those things.
Right. These are low air loss mattresses, right?
Yeah, low air loss bed systems, exactly.
Okay.
So it was a service-oriented business. It wasn't any different than waiting tables or bartending or anything else. You just followed up, you developed relationships, trust, all that.
Okay. And was this entirely home care, or was it nursing homes and
It was
hospitals?
hospitals.
Okay. All right. So you've got this, and now you're in the healthcare business and specialty beds, going into hospitals every day, and this suits you.
Yeah, it was fun. It was really fascinating. A lot to learn. I didn't know anything about how that there were different departments in hospitals, ICUs, ERs, oncology units, pediatric. Got to learn all of that. I didn't really think about care settings, nursing homes versus hospitals, acute care versus long-term care versus home care. So, it's a real opportunity to learn about a part of life I never really thought about. I never thought about healthcare. I never, why would you, right?
Well, so you've got this. You're 30.
Yep.
You're in the healthcare business, and so you just continue on, and where do you progress from there?
Well, so yeah, it was fun. I mean, I got to travel, got to be outside instead of stuck in a restaurant in the same building. So that was enlightening. Got to meet these interesting people, literally saving lives. You see these people in ICU that you think, well, this guy will never walk again, and sure enough, they walk. So it was fun being a part of that. And then I got an opportunity. A company called ATI Medical. They rented equipment to hospitals, all kinds of things, and so there's just another way to learn more about hospitals and the equipment and the units and all that. So I took that opportunity, worked with a guy named Brian Murphy. He's still around, doing good things. And he was a phenomenal. I couldn't have asked for a better guy to mentor me in calling on hospitals. And
so ATI, are they doing full durable medical equipment rentals in hospitals, right?
yeah, they're doing EKG machines. I mean, everything, IV pumps, CPM machine, you name it. Pulse oximeters were brand new technology of that. So hospitals would suddenly fill up and they didn't have enough equipment to meet their patient load. They'd call us. Excuse me, we'd bring whatever they needed 24 hours a day, 7 days a week.
Okay. So you're married now, and you're in this new career, and everything's going well. And
yeah, things are going well. And, I got to say, the people that I just happened to cross paths with were great mentors. That whether it be getting into that pub where all these ex-Fridays guys were, I got all this great training without having to be part of Fridays, which was kind of nice. It was not corporate, you know what I mean? It was highly personal and all of that. And the support guy for the low air loss beds. And then all of a sudden, now I am the point guy for this rental company, getting to meet a diversity of people. And I had a great boss that was a great mentor. Yeah, things are going great.
Okay,
married, responsible, had a house. I mean, holy cow.
It's all working out for you.
Yeah, living the dream. Never would have thought that, right when you're just hanging out, just doing little odd jobs or whatever you were doing, all of a sudden, like, you matter. You're in your 30s and you're part of the solution, right?
Yeah, in terms of business, it seems like you're the kind of guy that keeps their eyes open, and when there's opportunities available, you don't have the hesitancy. You just go forward.
Yeah.
And so now you can never predict where you're going to be. You couldn't have predicted that when you were 18 years old that you were going to be in the medical business in your 30s, because you didn't have a background in the medical business. But you are now, and you're dealing with all these different products, and you're working for somebody, right? It's
right.
not your company. All right. So we go from there, and what happens then?
So we. The company, apparently ATI was struggling, and I don't know the who, why, or wherefore behind that, but they got a relationship with a bioclinic, who's a company that made a portable low air or portable pressure relief system. So as opposed to bringing in an entire bed like I did with Meniscus, they had a portable system where you took the mattress off the existing hospital bed and put your mattress on it. And hospitals liked that idea. They didn't have storage space for their beds to be in hallways while they're renting an entire bed system from Meniscus, for example. And so because ATI was in these hospitals with equipment, it seemed like a natural, well, we'll just be able to offer these portable bed systems in addition to everything else we do. And it kind of worked. It's funny, what you're good at, you're good at. What you're not, you're not. And focus is a real key to business success. And it really, these air systems we would have to set up, our guys, our service people were used to taking an order. We need 20 IV pumps, dropping them off at the central supply, getting them checked in through their biomed, and gone. Well, bed systems aren't that way. You need to set them up, and that could take some time. And so it wasn't really a strength. So the company, BioClinic, decided to go to direct. And I was lucky enough to get a job with BioClinic, delivering, setting up, being the point guy on these portable bed systems.
Okay, so you've gone from getting in the healthcare business and then expanding to full durable medical, and now you've changed over and you've narrowed your focus to was a singular product?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, some variations, but basically.
Okay, right. So you've the mattress replacement versus the full bed. So you've gone to another company, and now how old are you now?
So yeah, I'm getting into my late 30s, I guess.
Okay, so you're getting some experience now.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. So and along this way, did you have any pitfalls along the way, or is it all just smooth sailing, just working hard and achieving success?
I would say, I mean, it was all hard work and learning and all of those things. I would say that on a personal level, I had, having worked in restaurants and being a bartender, I had quit drinking, did all that in my 20s, got that out of my system. Kind of your point in your 30s, all of a sudden you kind of realize, what kind of person do I want to be and where do I live? And making those serious decisions. Married the right woman, Linda's true blue, great morals and ethics. And I mean, we clicked, right? I didn't ever have to worry about what she may or may be doing. Right. I mean, we were so much on the same page. It was just such a relief. So to answer your question, I guess it was, I didn't have any trauma because I got rid of that stuff. I didn't hang out with some of the people in the restaurant business are pretty colorful individuals. And a lot of nefarious activities. And, I've been through all that. So I was able to abandon that, I guess.
Right. All right. So you got this, you're with the new company. Again, you're succeeding because this is newer technology and it's being accepted in the healthcare community. So you go forward and you're still working for this company.
Yeah. So then they had their struggles. BioClinic, I don't know a polite way to say this. They were cooking the books. And it's a publicly traded company. So when that came out, things got pretty tough, right? And so they sold their division to Medic PRN, which was a competing rental company to ATI that did durable medical. And they were going to try to do exactly what ATI had tried to do, was not only offer all this medical equipment, but also these portable airbed systems. And
so at that point, you changed companies again because they bought?
I opted not to. My regional manager at the time, who actually lived in Indianapolis, came to me and said, you got contacts. What do you say we try to do this ourselves? I mean, if we could screw this up just as well as somebody in Los Angeles can.
So this is kind of an aha moment. This is a pivotal point in terms of your business life, and everything's going. You don't have any children at this time, correct?
Yeah, we weren't able to. It wasn't like
Okay.
we weren't trying. It just
All right. So you I'm not saying children are a distraction, but you have different responsibilities
right.
when there's a bunch of children. So it's just you and your wife, and so you made this leap to getting your own business.
Yeah, I mean, it was we had some money saved up. We put it in the business, partnered, and because interestingly, the customers that I had that now all of a sudden Medic PRN is running the show and delivering equipment. Customers found a way to get a hold of me and said, "Would you please get back in this business? These guys are terrible."
Because
And so,
you had a different service level from the company that bought
yeah,
the.
different commitment level. We didn't. They were distracted. They were used to dropping stuff off and leaving, and so
Okay,
this
so
regional manager and I said, "Let's do it."
so you start your new company, you do the capital investment, you've got product, you're going, and you're approaching 40 at this time.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay.
And so you've probably seen this, I bet, in your career. My partner in the business, we hired a couple of guys that I'd worked with at ATI, were very service oriented, very detail oriented, really honest guys. So we shared a similar value system, and we were rocking. We got the Rick Mattress franchise for a while, if you remember that. That's a real interesting pressure management system. Things are going pretty well, and my original partner in the business has some pretty significant marital issues. I think he had maybe some other personal issues. He was originally from Georgia and didn't like the Midwest winters. Bottom line is he got out of the business. He wanted out. And he was kind of the main guy. He had had a pretty strong business experience with some Baxter, if you remember the old Baxter's company. So all of a sudden, this guy just decides I'm not doing this anymore. So
Okay.
there was a pretty significant crisis right there.
And so do you buy him out at this point? Or
Eventually we did.
Okay, so but you had a background in service.
Yeah.
And that's great because you did what you did well, but at this point you don't have a real background in finance.
At all. None.
Okay.
Nada. I was relying on him. And all of a sudden that's gone. And so I went to the two fellows that I had known previously at ATI, and they said, "Well, I'm not going to do this unless if you guys are interested, okay, let's do it. But I don't think I'm up for this personally." And they said, "Yeah, let's give it a shot." So we ended up taking over the company. We ended up buying him out, and it worked out really well for a number of years.
Okay. And did you keep that company or did you sell it?
Yeah, we kept the
later?
company. The person who left had a really good marketing mind, in my opinion. He's a pretty artistic guy. So we had a great logo, a great mission statement, all those things. And then...
so you continued the same model. He's just out of the picture.
Yeah, he's just out of the picture. We were running the show anyway, and I'm not taking anything away from him. He was doing what he was supposed to do.
Right.
At least we thought so. After he left, after I bought the company, we found a file box full of invoices that he had never posted.
Very disappointing.
Yeah, my accountant who had signed off on our financials literally went pale. I mean, literally went pale because his reputation.
Is this before or after you actually bought out the previous partner?
It was pretty much during the process.
Okay. That alter the price that you paid?
Well, I wasn't the best. I won't say I'm the best business guy. What happened is my father-in-law stepped up to the plate. He heard the story. I don't know if Linda told him. I don't know how that exactly happened, but he said, "Look, I'll help out." And he gave us a sum of money. We were able to buy my partner out. Then my goal was to pay him back as soon as possible, and with interest, which we were able to do. And then now I've got the company whole with these other two fellas in the company.
And what's the name of this company at this time?
It was Genesis Medical.
Okay.
That's the Barton chair. We did the Barton chair with you.
Yeah. All right. You go forward and just continue your career.
Yeah, and I learned some really, really hard lessons. And they're lessons, and you can either whine about them forever or just chalk it up to experience and move on. And a couple of us were focused. You got to do what you do and do it really well. I probably tried to do too many things. I was so interested in innovation, and that was kind of part of our mission statement of the company. What I wanted to do with that company was champion small business. There's so many great ideas out there. There are Americans that are inventing great things, but they don't have access to, if you remember, hospitals started signing national agreements with these organizations, with the Baxters of the world or whoever. They joined buying groups, and if you weren't part of the buying group, they didn't want to talk to you. And so I was bound and determined to bring innovation to these healthcare units, these systems, and keep the American dream alive, that inventiveness. And I became a pioneer, if you will.
Okay, great. So the business is advancing. You're, I assume, are you still just servicing Indianapolis area, or are you expanding?
No, we're servicing all of Indiana. We branched out at some Kentucky by virtue of nursing home business that we got. There's a lot of nursing homes are based out of Louisville for some reason. Mostly for-profit nursing homes in Indiana in our market.
So your business is getting larger.
Yeah, it's getting larger. Yep, we had a service arm in a branch in Louisville. We had one up in northern Indiana. So in order to cover the state, did some
now,
business in Illinois.
You mentioned you had two other guys that came along with you after you bought your previous partner out. Did they remain partners in the business?
Yeah, they did. And I got one of the fellows. I got stock option for him and all those things. And unfortunately, it didn't work out. And I take a lot of blame for that. And they went their own way, and I went mine. And in hindsight, I could have done better with that situation, but it is what it is. They've done business; they're doing very well.
Partnerships are tough.
They're tough.
They just are, and they always start off in a really optimistic way, but eventually, it can really cause problems because people have different levels of commitment, and
there's hubris, there's ego, there's a lot of dynamics there. And I didn't want to work 15-hour days. Do you know what I mean? I had a dog at home. I wanted to, so there was no lack of commitment on these guys' part. I could tell you that.
That's great. I had a dog at home. So at this, are you the primary partner in this as far as percentages, or?
Yeah, I'm the major
shareholder.
It was my father-in-law that bought this guy out. I'm the, it's, I guess, my company.
It's your company.
Yeah.
All right. So the other guys that came with you, they were with you, but they weren't heavy partners like you were before with the previous guy that left.
And initially, I wanted them to become, I wanted them to, become our company, that kind of thing. And, but there was just
didn't work out.
I had one guy that was there first thing in the morning and didn't leave till late at night, which was great from a work ethic. I mean, and honest as hell. I mean, I got no problem, but man, come on. I mean, he went through it. I think, he had some marital issues because of it, naturally. And I didn't want to be that guy.
So even then, you had you were able to achieve balance in your life. Even then,
I tried. Like most people, there's some days it was way out of bounds, and other days not so. So it's a.
But in general, you recognize that, and you tried to affect that along your life. Okay, so
I would absolutely agree.
Okay, so the business is flourishing. It's expanded. You're now what, in your 50s?
Yeah. Yeah, we got up to in my 50s. We're in the same. Linda becomes part of the company. The two guys that I was with, they went their separate ways, and Linda kind of filled that void. She's a good organizational type person. She's very diplomatic. She's very good at navigating, issues that invariably come up with employees and things like that.
And do you feel like you developed a leadership style along the way?
Yeah, I would say I became obsessed with the books, those books about positive attitude, books about success, books, things like that. Jeffrey Gitomer of the world, and I really got into that kind of thing pretty heavily, and that kind of helped develop some leadership skills, if you will.
Okay, and so once again, that's continued learning on your part. That's something that you've done really from a child, from the standpoint of reading.
Yep.
And you're advancing your learning. You're affecting your leadership style by continuing to look to find out how you want to be a leader. And part of that is in terms of positive thinking. Do you it's interesting to me. I've always thought of positive outlook as a philosophy.
Yeah.
And the thing that I've learned by doing research for this show and studying up is that there's a lot of science behind it as well. And I guess I was aware that there was science, but I never really took that into consideration. The science behind it is really about thinking positively builds neurons in your brain that affects you in a positive way, versus always being negative or thinking of the things that are going wrong. That again builds neural connections in your brain,
right?
And they repeat. So optimistic people, it doesn't mean you don't have down moments,
right?
But you're always looking for that optimism. There are people that, unfortunately, they always look at what's going wrong, and that reinforces itself in their brain. So the thing that you were doing by reading these books or trying to lead in this fashion, were building those
right
neural connections about positivity, which affects you. We talked about relationships as being a key. That's a key to pursuing happiness and contentment. So
right.
you're pursuing. And unlike a lot of people, it sounds like to me that you were aware that balance was important in your life, because a lot of people, it's really easy to get caught up in business, and that just becomes the focus of what you're doing.
Yeah.
And you become, workaholic is a standard term. That's your main focus in life. So you've got a balance, your company is succeeding. You've had a little drama with partnerships. You've had a little, and all kinds of things where people work, they come and they go, but everything's going well for you still. This idea of continuing to have a positive attitude is working for you, correct?
Yeah. Yeah. I just had this firm belief it'd all work out somehow, some way. And there's the downside to that a little bit. Again, hindsight being that great, 2020 vision. You gotta watch the numbers. You gotta, right? Business doesn't lie. You know what I mean? Either it is or isn't happening, and you got to make adjustments. It's not that complicated in that respect. You don't need an MBA, and that's at the end of the day, you got to keep your eye on the ball, which is business.
Yeah, there's a lot of people that are sales and service kind of mentality, and finance is a totally different thing.
Absolutely.
Numbers don't lie. It doesn't matter how positive you want to be, numbers don't lie.
Yeah.
So but you've gotten help with this. You say Linda came on board. I assume that she's I've met her, so I know that she's more adept in that
right.
That number area. So that's a great partnership, right?
Right.
So you go on, and I know at some point you sold your company. When was that?
Yeah, so we love being a pioneer, and you probably heard this. Sometimes pioneers get shot. You
Yeah,
know,
the old saying is, yeah, pioneer, you can end up face down in the mud with an arrow in your back.
that's right. And so I partnered with Barton, for example. And you know that story really, really well. We had a lot of success with that program. And then I partnered with a company called SizeWise, which specialized in bariatric equipment, which is no pun intended, a huge problem in Indiana in particular. Obesity.
Getting less and less with Ozempic.
Yeah. Hey, I've got a sister-in-law who's lost 30 pounds
Right.
on that, and some lifestyle changes. But at any rate, that was between Barton, SizeWise, some other products. We spearheaded a line that competed directly with in the negative pressure market. It was dominated by one company. We came up with an alternative approach. It was significantly less expensive, and that was a tough sell, but it worked out. So at any rate, it got to a point where we had to make some changes, cut loose from SizeWise, for example. All of a sudden, I had kind of partnered with a company out of Ohio. It was more of a handshake deal, which in hindsight was the wrong thing to do. Green takes over some people and what were once friends, and all of a sudden you're talking money, and they're a lot less friendly, let me put it that way. So we, at any rate, we got, how can I say this, hospitals merge, hospitals renegotiate contracts, et cetera, and we lost some business because of that, and a pretty significant amount of business, and we ended up having to sell. It was a little bit of a fire sale, unfortunately, and so we didn't.
Well, I mean, industries change.
Yeah, industry changes.
It's just the way it is.
I take ownership. I made some tactical errors in judgment, and you got to live with that. And
so, but you at this point, I mean, you still have had a career that, based on most description, hasn't been an incredibly rocky road. It's been a lot of work, but you've had success. You've had stimulation along the way with new products and new designs that you participated in, and so you sell the company. And then suddenly, and how old are you now when you sell the company?
Yes, we're late 50s, early-ish 60s, about 10 years ago. So
60 years old, you sell the company, you've worked your ass off your whole life. You've pursued excellence every step of the way, and now you've sold everything and you're retired, right?
Yeah.
And so what do you do? What goes through your mind? Had you prepared for this moment?
Not at all. Not at all. And it's funny, you talk to people or listen to podcasts or whatever, and these people had this meticulous planning, these goals and these. Linda and I didn't have any of that. We knew early on in our marriage that we at some point wanted to retire in the Southwest. We just knew that somehow.
That was just an ideal.
It was
exactly. That's the ideal circumstance. Oh, we're going to retire in the Southwest. I assume that you traveled a lot,
right,
during your career, so you'd seen a lot of different places. So you sell the company and you say, you look at your wife and you say, "What's next, honey?"
Well, that's kind of what happened. We the company that bought us, we had thought we were like really close friends, and all of a sudden, when you're talking money, all of a sudden you find out maybe not. Maybe you misjudged some character. At any rate, it was amazing how adversarial it got. And I was like totally, and I feel so naive looking back, couldn't believe how adversarial one person in particular was. He was mean. And it was like his job all of a sudden is to humiliate me and my wife for whatever reason. And
in all fairness, someone's trying to buy your company. They're trying to get the lowest price that they can. You're trying to sell your company. You're trying to get the highest price you can. That alone is an adversarial position.
Right.
So you go through that, and that's. I'm sure that was eye opening for you, but that's rough and ready. So. And but it finally does end. You finally settle on and it's done. You might have had a little bad taste in your mouth. Maybe not, but then you wake up and you look at your wife and you say, what's next?
So, yeah, I came home from work. These guys were not any fun to work with, which I thought we'd be partners and make this thing happen. And all of a sudden, it's not very much fun. And I come home and she goes, I figured out what we're going to do. And I said, what? So you got to understand, it's the winter in Indiana. We had about 10 inches of very heavy snow. It had to shovel it. It was really awful. And she
pretty
goes,
flat there. Pretty flat there. There's nothing to block the wind when it's coming through there, right?
It was a miserable winter. And she goes, we don't have to live here. We don't have kids that have kids. We don't have, we had friends and that, we would miss and all that, but we were ready to go.
You didn't have the responsibility holding you there anymore.
Exactly. Had none of that. And I said, well, what do you think? And she goes, why don't we buy a RV and live in an RV full time and, work on the different parks like we've always kind of talked about, and just until we find a place we want to put roots down. Long story short, that's what we did in a very short period of time. Our neighbors and friends were like, what? Because it wasn't like we had told people a year ago or 5 years ago that this was ultimately the goal. It was just like out of the blue, hey, we're leaving.
So you come home, she says, hey, this is what we're going to do. And you say, okay. And then the next thing you're saying to your neighbors, sayonara.
Yeah. It's like the Clampetts on Beverly Hillbillies, right? You found oil and you're heading out to wherever. It was kind of like that.
Okay. So you make that decision that you're going to buy an RV, you're going to travel around. You mentioned that you were interested in national parks, right? Did you say that? And so you leave Indianapolis, the snowy winter of Indianapolis, and where do you go first?
We shopped around for a fifth wheel. Linda found a website and it talked about the good and the bad and the ugly of Class A versus fifth wheels, which I didn't know what any of this stuff was. I never owned a pickup truck.
What is a fifth wheel?
So a fifth wheel is where it attaches to the bed of a truck, like a semi.
Okay, all right.
And so that was our first thing we learned.
So you have to get a big truck.
Yeah, you got to get a truck to pull this thing. This is a 35-foot RV, which is big by RV standards. It pivots on the back of the truck. There's some stability things that are beneficial. So yeah, not only do you have the fifth wheel you got to buy, but you got to buy the truck to haul it with, and the insurance and all of those things. It's a whole new ball.
And you never had any of that before, so you didn't know anything about it.
I'm a city boy.
And how long did it take you to determine which trailer and which truck? And because you're motivated at this point, she's already said we're going.
Yeah, we're going.
How long did it take for you to find that and pack up and get out of Dodge?
It took less than a year, about 9 months.
Okay, so then by then you do have a little bit of plan or some at least anticipation of what you want to do. So you take off, and where's your first place that you go?
Our first spot was, so just to back up real quick, because there is a funny part of that story. You go to an RV lot. You've seen them all on the interstates, and there are thousands of different sizes, big, little, small, right? And you think, this is overwhelming. So we walk into the dealership, and my brother-in-law was the accountant for this huge RV place. So he directed us there. And so we go there.
So you were connected.
We are connected.
Okay.
And there was a level of trust. He really liked this guy. This guy was very successful, knew what he's doing, been in the business for a while. So we go in there, we talk to a sales guy, and he goes, okay, well, like anything, Rick, as you know, well, what are your goals? What are you buying one for? What's your plan? And we told him, and that narrowed that selection down to a very small area, because only certain RVs are going to be compatible with
fit your criteria. Right?
Yeah, fit the criteria. So that all of a sudden became a much easier decision. We found one. We took off. So it's August. We literally had to get rid of everything in our house. We had a nice home in Indianapolis with everything you need, and all of a sudden you don't need any of it.
Right. So you collected stuff
your
entire life.
Yeah.
And, you say it's a 35-foot RV.
Yeah.
So it
With
only
slide
holds
outs.
yeah, but it only holds so much stuff.
Very little stuff.
Okay. So, including your entire wardrobe, you can't take your entire wardrobe. You
Exactly.
must be giving away clothes too.
I had an amazing album collection. I had stuff, Rick. I had really done a good job
And
collecting.
you let go of all of it.
And it was the most liberating experience I've ever had, getting rid of all that junk, all that. And some of it's got great memories. I get all that. We put some of that stuff in storage.
the stuff that you considered really of
Yeah.
value later. Okay. All right. So we get there and we hit the road, and where do you go?
So Linda had done all this research. She is really good at this kind of thing. So not only did she find a website to help us decide what kind of vehicle and all that, did a great job. The lady had spreadsheets and all this stuff. So we were making educated choices in a short time frame. And she had gotten online CoolWorks or CoolJobs.com, something like that. And
Cooljobs.com.
yeah, and she had gone, and sure enough, Death Valley in California was hiring.
Death Valley.
Death Valley.
All right. Which is a national park, right?
It's a national park. And they are run by Xanterra, is the vendor there, the concessionaire, they call them. And they run the resort.
So you decide you're not just going to be total nomads. You're going to actually go someplace, and you wanted something to do once you got there.
Yeah, our whole goal was to work at national parks for the concessionaire and to experience that park through multiple seasons, to be a part of the park, not just, check it off, like spend 2 days someplace. Okay, I've seen the Grand Canyon.
So Death Valley is first on the list. You hop on, and it's in California. I guess it's pretty warm in Death Valley.
Yeah, so we're driving cross country. They had called us and said, well, remember we said we needed you in October? Well, we need you in September. So it all of a sudden became this panic mode. We ditched everything. And by the way, Rick, all these cool things you've collected, like you finally get to a point in your life where you can actually get rid of all the hand-me-down furniture that you've collected. That's Linda and I had a house full of handyman out.
Sure.
Then we finally got to a point where we actually bought good stuff. And then you don't need it anymore. None of all these nieces and nephews that we had who were just starting to get real lives, none of them wanted any of our stuff. And this is good stuff. And we're asking them, because we took anything we could get when we first got married. And I'm looking at them like, well, what's wrong with this? Ethan Allen furniture and, high-end stuff. Oh, it's not our style.
It's old stuff, John. I mean, it's old stuff.
Rick,
They're young people. They're new stuff people.
And they're poor. I mean, we didn't have style preferences.
Well, I understand that, but it's a different generation. We've already discussed that it's different. Life is different.
We thought that was the funniest thing. Anyway, we were able to get rid of the stuff. We head to Death Valley. We get there. The winter in Death Valley is amazing. Very, very good temperatures. Very livable place in the winter months. Brutally hot in the summer, but our jobs are only for the winter.
So you got there at the right time. It's in season in Death
Absolutely.
Valley. All right.
As a bartender, I took the day shift because you didn't make much money then. I didn't care about making money. That wasn't the point. The young kids.
You're back to your roots. You're bartending.
Back to my roots. I swore I'd never do it again, but hey, what the heck? So I'm a bartender in this very exclusive hotel there in Death Valley. It's movie stars stay there. Some of the acts from Las Vegas come there and stay when they want to get away from Las Vegas. Really a nice place. And Linda is a waitress and or she would seat people, that kind of thing. And they loved us because
of course
we showed up on time and sober. They absolutely thought that was great.
And in all fairness, you have a pretty big enthusiasm for life, John.
Thanks. Yeah. I made lots of friends with people that come into the bar during the day shift. They'd ask for advice of where to hike and what to do. Linda and she would be working the door. I'm the bartender. So we were a team, and they picked up on that, and they really, people just enjoyed that. They loved our story. And then they would take our advice, and it was really gratifying. Later during their stay, they would show up at the bar or wherever and tell us how much fun they had on whatever tip we'd given them. And that really made it so much more worthwhile than just doing the job. Enhancing somebody's
satisfying. Stay. Okay. So you stay the season in Death Valley. And then, but you don't want to be in Death Valley in the summertime.
Oh, sir. So we applied. All along, our goal was to get to Glacier National Park. That's, for whatever reason, that's our favorite park, even to this day.
And that's in Montana, right?
It's on the Montana-Canadian border.
Right.
Way up northwest.
Right.
Up in the Rockies.
So we get in the fifth wheel, and at this point we go to Glacier National Park.
Well, yeah, we applied online because there was Xanterra Park as well. Xanterra is the concessionaire. And so we apply online, we got jobs. And I'll tell you, your life, you meet people and have experiences. I'm thinking I'm going to go there and be a bartender.
Right, that's your background.
That's what I know. And pretty good at it. And I'm talking to the HR young woman. And we're going through this interview, and she says, I got to interject here. Can I just throw an idea out? And I said, sure. She goes, sounds like, based on our conversation, what you've really enjoyed at Death Valley is interacting with customers and telling them about the park and how they're going to get the most out of their visit there. I said, well, that's true. She says, well, we have these jobs, these red bus driver jobs. They're basically tour guides. I'm just telling you, I think you'd be better suited for that personally. I said, well, sure. What the heck? What do I got to lose? And that was my first tour guide position.
And are you driving the bus, or you just?
Yeah, so you drive these iconic 1930s era white motor company out of Cleveland, Ohio buses. They're antiques. They've been refurbished by Ford Motor Company in the 90s. And you drive them, 17 people sit in them, and you drive them all over the park, and you tell people about the park, and it's just a fun way to see the park.
Fantastic. So you do this, you finish the season in Death Valley, and then you go for the season in Glacier, which is
doing something I've never done before.
Yeah. So, and then you're driving a bus. What's Linda doing in Glacier?
So Linda is the concierge at Lake McDonald Lodge. So basically, for $10 an hour, she's my boss.
But she's once again, it's the service.
It's a service
business.
thing. We're
she's
having
in the service business, and you know what you're good at.
Yeah.
And well, the HR person suggested, just by talking to you, hey, you'd be a good fit for this, but it's still a service business. Listen, the bartender is a service business.
Absolutely.
I mean, most people want to have conversations at the bar with the bartender,
absolutely,
back and forth. Okay. So you're driving the bus and you do the season in Glacier, but winter comes. And I guess you can stay in Glacier. There's ski resorts around there, right?
Yeah, what we did was, because we're in a fifth wheel, the season ended, so we worked all the way through September. I got, again, just dumb luck. I got great training. A guy named Russ Olson, retired cop from South Florida, and he also had fallen in love with Glacier Park. He would come back from Florida. He retired in Florida, but he would come for the summers and work as a red bus driver. He trained all of us. He's in his 21st year there this year, and really lucky to have him, to a couple of other people as mentors. Got a CDL, and thought I died and gone to heaven. It's like the dream job. I didn't know you could get paid to show people parks. I couldn't believe my good fortune. Naturally curious. I like history. It's been a hobby of mine so now I get to basically share what I've read about with people and tell them the stories of the Wild West. And it was an absolute hoot. So the season comes to an end, fall colors, and we've accomplished our goal. We saw spring, summer, and fall in Glacier National Park, and we went back to Death Valley.
Back for the season in Death Valley.
Yeah.
Okay. And so you go back to bartending, or you
Yeah, I went back to
doing,
bartending. I took the shift nobody wanted because I didn't really care. Wasn't there really to make money. They have a really affordable place for us to park our rig, and
so how much are you working at these places? I mean, how many?
well, they work you pretty hard, I got to say, because, for example, Glacier, the season's like 3 months. I mean, it's a very 3 or 4 months. It's pretty short
Narrow,
tourist
yeah.
season because of the snow. Death Valley, you just have that winter period that it's really busy, and then it's empty. So kind of a skeleton crew. You get a lot of interesting people that take these jobs that have no business taking them. So yeah, we're working 50, 60 hours a week,
Well, you're working a lot.
working a lot because we show up on time, because we have, I don't know, some class, or we get the big picture. You're working with kids in their 20s or some pretty irresponsible people.
Still, I mean, you're in your 60s and retired technically, and
Yeah.
now you're back working 50, 60 hours a week, but
Yeah.
you're enjoying it. You're
It was
enjoying the experience.
most of the time. Yeah.
Okay, so we do that, and after that season, do you go back to Glacier?
Yeah. We did three seasons at Glacier. We did 2.5 at Death Valley.
So that's 6 or 7 months a year. What are you doing for the other 4 or 5 months?
We went to Florida and stayed with my in-laws. They had a place outside of Fort. What is it? On the West Coast. So we
Well,
would.
so in general, the life's pretty freeing. You've got
It's
you've got
reputable.
your fifth wheel that you can go anywhere you want and
Yeah.
just pull over, and it's your house, right?
Absolutely. It's a
Yeah,
condo on wheels.
right. Okay,
And,
so
and by national park standards, we were living large.
well, yeah, you were big. Well, you retiree, you sold your business, you
Right.
deserve to have a little. So you do that for 3 years basically, and where do you go then? Do you pick another park?
Yeah. I got a friend of mine from high school on Facebook had worked after high school, had worked at Sequoia Kings Canyon National Park, and his friends from his 20s had grown up, got married, and they started a tour business of Sequoia Kings Canyon and needed a driver. Linda and I stopped by. Really nice family.
And you had the red bus experience.
Yeah, there
And
was
so where's Sequoia Canyon?
Sequoia Kings Canyon. That's the Sierra Nevada mountains, right outside of what would be a good Visalia, California, Central Valley. So working class California.
It's in California.
Yeah, yeah.
I'm gonna say, so you're Sequoia King Canyon.
Yep.
You're doing tours there. How long is the season there?
I just worked there for the summer, so March through October.
Okay, and what do you do? What do you do then? The rest
Well,
of the
so
year.
we do more of the same. It's great. It's a great family to work with. The guy is a fantastic. Just the family and all. It's a different experience than working for a big concessionaire like Xanterra, and we became very, very close. And from there, Linda, we were going to Florida to see the in-laws, and Linda says, "Hey, I had on Facebook, I had reconnected with people I'd gone to high school with, and one of them had retired to a place, Mesquite, Nevada, a Sun City resort, and he had said I'd met him, and we visited with them in Las Vegas one time. We were working at Death Valley. I just said, well, Linda and I ultimately are looking for a place to retire. And he goes, I got just the place. I said, where's that? He goes, Mesquite, Nevada. And I'm thinking, Rick,
Nevada.
hell no. Nevada is one of the ugliest states I've ever seen. There is no way ever I am retiring. Well, we work a season at Sequoia Kings Canyon. We're heading to Florida to see the in-laws. Linda says, hey, let's just stop in Mesquite and check it out. So we came, visited for a couple of months, looked around, and little did I know, we walked away with a commitment to build a home here in beautiful Mesquite in the Mojave Desert, Rick. I'm from the Midwest. I've been working in the Rocky Mountains, And all of a sudden, I'm going to be the proud owner of a home in the freaky Mojave Desert. And sure enough, that's how we ended up here.
Okay, and so you sold the fifth wheel.
Yeah, so we moved here. We kept the fifth wheel. We talked about in-laws in Florida and said, look, much to their surprise, because all Midwesterners, it's kind of a rule, have to retire in Florida. And nobody could believe that we would dare not retire in Florida. And we sold them, hey, look, we're never going to live in Florida, but if you want, we'll build a place with enough room for you to. And they said, okay. And at 80 some years old, they agreed to pick up and move all their stuff from Florida to Mesquite. So now all of a sudden I've got an in-laws quarters and Linda and me, and here we are.
Nice. Okay. So are you near a national park there?
Well, funny you'd bring that up, Rick. We picked this place because within a day's drive, I think there's like 20 national parks we could get to. Now, some of them are long drives. But nevertheless, we're right in the heart of things. Plus, we had access to Las Vegas, that big airport there. We get back home if we need.
How far is it from Vegas? How far of a drive?
At 80 miles.
Close.
Very close. And it's an 80-mile-an-hour speed limit.
So you're in the desert.
Well, yeah.
All right. So are you doing tour guiding now?
So again, I'm glad you asked that. Linda, we're getting this place, and I'm telling Linda, listen, I love giving tours. It's a very, very gratifying to make somebody's vacation. You have that power. These are bucket lists for people. These are dreams, and all of a sudden you're that guy that facilitates that. It's the most rewarding job I've ever had. And I'm telling her, look, I'm not the kind of guy that's going to retire and not do something. And so lo and behold, on one of our long drives between Florida and here, and she gets online and finds this company, Southern Utah Scenic Tours, and she says, look, let's contact these guys and see. They're right in St. George, just 40 miles up the road. And I contacted this guy, had a conversation, a couple of them, and I think 3 years later, he calls me and says, we're hiring. Are you still interested? And we had settled in here in Mesquite. And I said, you bet. And next thing I know, part-time tour guide for these guys out of St. George.
And where do you go to do the tours?
You name it. So this is, I think, these well into your podcast.
You travel around on the tours?
Yeah, big time. So I get this job, and initially their bread and butter is what they call the Mighty Five of Utah. There's 5 national parks in Utah that are like incredible. A couple of really cool state parks. And so that's what most people do. It's the most affordable. And so I'll pick them up in Las Vegas, and then I'll take them and drive them all around Utah for about 5-10 days, whatever the case may be.
And it's a big travel bus.
Yeah, it's a Mercedes. One of those big, beautiful, nice Mercedes, seats 15, very comfortable.
Nice.
Reliable.
And how much are you doing that now?
I would say probably at least one tour a month from March through October.
Which you say is 5 to 10 days, the tours?
Some of them. It depends. So the best part of this story, so I do the 5-day tour. That's kind of you get broken in, so to speak. And that goes pretty well. He's got a 10-day tour called the Grand Circle. It's much more expensive, but it's the whole, what do they call it? The Colorado Plateau. It is amazing. We go to Mesa Verde, Colorado, for example, Moab, Grand Canyon. It's a really amazing
and
tour.
And so you the stop-offs, are you staying in hotels or where are you staying?
Yeah, we stay in 3-star hotels or better. Yeah, they're all nice hotels. We do all the vetting, if you will.
And so when you do this, Linda stays at home?
Yeah, that's the downside to this thing. But that's kind of a mixed bag. I mean, she's got things she's doing as well. So yeah, if I had one less than great thing is I'm away from home. But I got to tell you, it is like I kind of said, it's people have been dreaming about these vacations for maybe their whole lives, and you're making those dreams come true. That 10-day tour of the Grand Circle's a big bang for your buck. Well, COVID comes, right? Puts a
Yeah,
damper on things.
I'd imagine.
Yeah. So this company, like most companies in this, really struggled because it's pretty hard to do a tour where you're all masked up. So after COVID, they start ramping things up again. Prior to COVID, at one point in their history, they used to do tours of California. They used to do tours of the Northern Rockies. Well, now COVID's over and things are starting to ramp back up. They want to start doing these tours again. What just so happens, they hired a guy that actually did Sequoia Kings Canyon, that actually did live in Death Valley, the guy that used to work and give tours of Glacier. So I was able to, with Linda's blessing, became their guy to do the Northern Rockies, do the California tour, as well as their Utah, their usual.
You are the man. So
Right.
when you're driving this bus, do you have a microphone?
Yeah, I got a microphone.
So you're able to put on the full show.
The whole. Oh, yeah. There's something perverted. There's some need in my system where I guess I'm a kind of a grandstander, I guess.
Well, I don't know. I think that you give a good presentation. So, so the name of this podcast is Secret to a Happy Life.
Yeah.
And the stories that we gathered from you is really from a young age, you're pursuing a happy life. In the beginning, you're reading, learning, you get out, and you have a great family, you have great relationships. You're living in a really community area in Indianapolis. Your entire career has been about communicating with people. Even when you're working in the restaurant business, I guess not so much if you're dishwashing in the back, but
Right.
once you made it out to the front, you're communicating with people. Then you go to Germany and you have a continued education of being able to travel through Europe and seeing different cultures. That had to be, pretty invigorating. You're a pretty young man at that time. A lot of kids, they either take a year off from college or they graduate from college and they backpack through Europe. You're doing better than backpacking. You're working and then you can travel all around Europe. You come back here, you got your head on straight, and you're pursuing a happy life. And then by some odd circumstance, you got into healthcare, figured out that you're pretty good at it, and spent, I guess, 30 years in healthcare.
Right.
Suddenly you sell your business and it's, what am I going to do next? You come home and your wife said, hey, we're going to get a fifth wheel RV travel trailer and travel the United States and see national parks. And you did. And, the thing that's interesting is all along your life, you're continuing to pursue something that makes you happy, and that's communicating with people. So as soon as you start traveling these national parks, you automatically get service jobs again where you're communicating with people. Did you ever find that ironic when you did it?
Yeah, it's almost like when I got that first red bus driver job. I mean, I loved it, and it was like it was meant to be. It was like all these events through my life, whether bartending or waiting tables or whatever, kind of led up, gave me or got me, helped me develop the skills necessary to pull that job off.
So the final question, and that is, what advice do you have to other people that were in the same circumstance as you? And that circumstance is you're retiring and you're saying, what's next? What advice do you have for those people?
Well, I would tell them, find something you do for free and kind of pursue that in whatever form that is, because there's a lot of gratification in that. And just when you get up in the morning and it doesn't feel like a job, do you know what I mean? You're looking forward to doing that thing. And just if there's a hobby or something you put off, I mean, just go for it. Believe in yourself, and yeah.
Well, I want to thank you for doing the episode today. And I've known you for a long time. We haven't seen each other or talked for a while, but the impression that you always are looking for the positive, and you have a attitude that's really contagious. And there's a lot of people that are going to learn something from listening to your life. And you haven't had a great deal of drama in your life, but you've always had the pursuit of being happy and seeking contentment. And the thing about it is the fact that you've stayed focused on pushing forward. You've achieved that. And,
Thanks.
for a lot of people, you can teach them how to have a happy life. So thank you so much for being here. Say hello to Linda for me. And I look forward to talking to you soon, John.
All right. God bless. Thanks for inviting me to be a part of this.
Oh, you're welcome. Hey, thanks for listening. Please go to secrettoahappylife.com to comment or nominate a guest that you think has a great story about their pursuit of happiness. Download other episodes wherever you get your favorite podcasts. And remember, grace, hope, and forgiveness. Happiness is a choice.